You can create solar studies to help visualize the impact of natural light and shadows on both the exteriors and interiors of projects. Solar studies can show how shadows from terrain and surrounding buildings affect a site, or where natural light penetrates a building at specific times of the day and year. Solar studies can be very helpful. Building authorities are increasingly concerned with solar access around new developments, and solar studies provide an effective way to demonstrate the shadows cast by your building project. You can create a solar study at any stage in your project development, from conceptual design through detailed modeling. Solar studies are most intuitive when created in conjunction with the sun path, but the path does not need to be visible in order to view and manage shadows. I'll open the 3D view named Solar Studies. Note that there is a topo surface in the model that has been turned off in this view, but the landscaping and parking components close to the building are still shown. I'll enable the sun path by clicking Sun Path in the View control bar and choosing Sun Path On. Then, I'll click Sun Path again and choose Sun Settings. Revit displays the Sun Settings dialog. In the Solar Study section, I can choose a still image, a single-day animation, or a multi-day animation. If I select multi-day, I can select a range of dates and an interval of time on each of those dates. If I select single day, I can choose a date and a time range for that date. In the presets list, I can choose one of the preset studies. Or I can choose In Session, adjust the date and time, and then click Save Settings to save these settings as a new custom preset. I can also select a preset and duplicate it. For example, I'll choose the Summer Solstice Solar Study, then I'll click Duplicate. I'll name my new preset My Solar Study, and then click OK. Now that I've created a new preset, I can adjust its settings. For example, I'll change the date to June 21st, 2014. If you live in the Southern Hemisphere, you could change the date to December 21st, 2014. I'll leave the location set to Boston, Massachusetts. You can choose your own location. If you select sunrise to sunset, Revit will limit the time selection to a range between sunrise and sunset at the current location for the date specified. If you clear this checkbox, you can choose your own start and end times. For example, I can set a range from 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. I'll select sunrise to sunset. Then, in the time interval drop-down, I'll set a time interval of 15 minutes. This will yield an animation containing 61 frames. I'll leave the ground plane at level set to its current value and click OK to close the Sun Settings dialog. In order to create a solar study, I need to turn shadows on. In the View control bar, I'll click Shadows. Once Revit calculates the shadows for the current sun position, when I expand the Sun Path menu, I can see a new option called Preview Solar Study. When I click that tool, Revit displays player controls on the options bar. You can use the tools on the player bar to step through individual frames of the solar study, or to preview the entire study. For example, when I click Next Frame, the sun moves forward on its daily path, and the shadows update. When I click Next Keyframe, the preview jumps ahead several frames. You can use these tools to jump forward or back. When you click Play, Revit displays a preview of the entire solar study. Note that Revit must regenerate each frame, which can take a considerable amount of time. You can click Cancel or simply press Escape to stop the player. You can also change the visual style if you wish, and then preview the solar study in a realistic or shaded mode. But again, this can have an even more significant effect on Revit's performance. You can also turn off the sun path if you find it distracting. Revit can produce a solar study regardless of whether the sun path is on or off. Right now, we're only previewing the solar study within Revit. If you wish, you can export the solar study as a separate animation file so that it can be shared with others. To do this, expand the application menu and choose Export, Images and Animations, Solar Study. Revit displays the length format dialog. You can now specify the output length and format. For example, you can export all of the frames of the solar study animation, or just a specific range of frames. I'll choose All Frames, which will produce a solar study animation containing 61 frames. In the frames per second field, you can adjust the speed of the animation, measured in frames per second. If I leave this set to the default value of 15, the animation will only be 4 seconds long. I'll change this to 2 frames per second, which will result in a 30-second animation. In the Format section, you can select the visual style that will be used in the resulting solar study animation. I'll leave this set to Hidden Line. If you choose one of the other settings, it will take progressively longer for Revit to generate the animation. You can also adjust the size of the resulting animation. I'll change the Zoom to value to 10% of the actual size to reduce Revit's processing time. Once you've got everything set, click OK. Revit displays the Export Animated Solar Study dialog. Navigate to where you want to save the animation, specify the file name, and click Save. The final step before Revit begins to create the animation is to specify the video compression. Compressing the video can reduce its file size, but note that compression can affect the image quality of the video. In the Video Compression dialog, you can expand the compressor drop-down and select one of the available compression schemes. This list will vary depending on the capabilities of your computer. When you choose a compression scheme, you can then click Configure and adjust the compression settings. Each compression scheme will have its own unique settings, so this dialog may look different, depending on the compression scheme you select. I'll click Cancel and then switch back to full frames uncompressed. When I click OK, Revit will begin to export the video. A progress bar displays on the status bar, and the image in the drawing area will update as Revit calculates each frame. Depending on the settings you chose and the capabilities of your system, this can take a considerable amount of time. When Revit finishes processing the video, you can locate the animation file using Windows Explorer and play it using any animation player.